Grazie molte. Thank you very much. So I'd like to thank Meg Ryan for being with us. Thank you very much. For sharing with us some of her memories, of her insightful thoughts about the cinema and the film business and the films she played with. I also would like to thank Nina Rote for moderating this conversation, and I'll give you the microphone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. So, the woman to my left embodies the quintessential girl next door. She's the woman all women want to be friends with, and all men want to take home to their mother. And yet her acting roles and the way she's made her choices professionally has been anything but safe, especially in the second decade of your career. So I wanted to give another round of applause to the Leopard Club winner, Meg Ryan. And it's lucky we coordinated to be Ebony and Ivory this morning. We worked that out. Let's talk about the beginning of your career. You were on As the World Turns, and then you did the last of George Cukor's films, Rich and Famous, where you played Candice Bergen's daughter. How was that? How were the first few years of your professional life? And what do you remember from that?
Well, it's like about a million years ago now, so I mostly remember being absolutely confused and not really afraid, but just kind of confused. I was a journalism major at New York University, and I was paying my way through school. And how I did it was I did commercials, and every now and then I would get an assignment from my journalism teacher, and for instance, I went to the As the World Turns, the soap opera audition, so that I could write about auditioning for a soap opera. And I got the part, which I really only wanted to write a paper about it, but I got the part. So I did that, and I remember my first day actually on that soap opera. And that's the kind of thing they did, an hour of storytelling every single day, and I did nothing. I mean, I barely knew how to memorize a line, let alone stand on a mark and have do action and talk to another act. I just didn't know anything at all. I did high school plays. So my first job was to take my friend is taping everything I say. That's so cute. I'll tell you later. I'm taping it too. But wait, what was I saying? Oh, so anyway, I have a thing where I'm supposed to go down the staircase and have the guy who became my future love interest, have him open a jar of peanut butter for me. And they did about 37 or 38 takes. I just couldn't figure anything out at all. And anyway, they stayed patient with me, and my overwhelming memories are actually about being confused and calling George Cukor, and he had to keep endlessly correcting me. So he really was, he is one of the all-time great romantic comedy directors, But he was 90, 92 by the time I worked with him. So,
do you have a gem that you took away from working with him?
Yes, it was that his major direction for everybody was, I remember him saying this to Candice Bergen and Jacqueline Bisset were both in the movie. He would kind of take his teeth out, and then he would scream, "Don't act! Stop acting!" And I remember, and that is really good advice, actually. Really, really good advice to not act, to just be. So I think about it actually every now and then now.
Do you feel like you grew from the stars of the 30s and 40s for your career? Because you're so quintessentially a movie star, and you were probably one of the last ones of the movie stars.
Thank you, but yeah, they inspire me to this day. There's in the U.S. Turner Classic Movies on television. We have this app we can watch on our Apple TVs called Filmstruck, and you can watch all of these old movies, and then you can look up these actors. And a lot of my friends and I do it together. We're kind of gossipy about people like Irene Dunn and Cary Grant. Did you know? You know, kind of about 60 years or 70 years too late.
And do you remember the first film you ever watched?
The first movie I ever, I used to watch film, again, when I was a kid, they had a thing called 4:30 movie, and they played a lot of black and white films. And I watched Carole Lombard and Katharine Hepburn. But the first movie I ever went to go see was The Poseidon Adventure. Do you remember that? It's about a ocean liner that capsizes. That's all.
Very poignant. Yes, your first film.
My first film.
And then in 1989 comes Rob Reiner's When Harry Met Sally. After a few other great films like Top Gun, Inner Space, The Presidio, and you're there acting with Billy Crystal. What do you remember from that experience? How were you cast for that?
I auditioned. I auditioned, and it's a miracle I got that part. Again, I just didn't know anything. I had done Top Gun, and from there's a time in your life, I always tell my son, who's an actor too, where you kind of make a profession out of auditioning. And I just auditioned for everything, and that was one. And we rehearsed quite a bit on that movie, and we read through the script quite a bit. So it was a really great bar to set in my career. It was a great experience to have, because we had 2 or 3 weeks where we just went through the script endlessly, and we improvised around, and they added some of the things to the script, and so.
Talked about the script, and of course, it's a script by the late, great Nora Ephron. And that film, you know, there's the quintessential deli scene. I don't think there's a person alive who doesn't remember that, or know it, or think about it, or quote it at times. So, I know I do. So, what do you remember your directions were from Rob Reiner? And what was it like to film such a, sort of for the normal human being, kind of embarrassing scene?
Yes. Well, I got myself into trouble that way, because one of the things about the script was that Sally was funny because of how she behaved. She was behaviorally funny. She didn't really have punchlines in the film. You know, it's sort of how she did things rather than the payoff punchline. Because Billy was such a great comedian, he had those things. So initially, the scene was written as the two people talking about how women fake orgasms. And so because Sally was a behavioral, like, had to be funny that way, I suggested that I just do one. It was kind of like, I just made my own problem, I guess. But the day we shot was mostly about how nervous Rob was, the director, Rob Reiner, to have his mother be in the scene. And she's the one who said, I'll have what she's having. That's the quote. Yeah. And the other, like last week or a couple weeks ago, a friend of mine showed Daisy, my daughter, who's 13, When Harry Met Sally. She doesn't see my movies. She's seen Sleepless in Seattle and When Harry Met Sally. And he kept coming out of the living room and saying, she doesn't get it, she doesn't get it, she doesn't get it. And then she, I guess for that scene, she kept saying to him, what's that? What's my mom doing? So we had to put off that conversation.
I would like to do things a little differently. Usually we have questions from the audience at the end, and because this is such a session packed with information, I think we might forget a question.
Hello, it's not exactly about that film, but something that you said previously. The greatest secret is not to act. But how professional actor cannot act because they are trained for that? Is it possible?
I think what he meant by that was, especially in film, there is, I think when you're trained as an actor, you can be trained in technique you can be trained to use, you can be trained as a craftsperson, and those things come in really handy when you feel like you're outside of the scene and not inside of the scene. But I think what Q-Core meant was to not have quotes around, to not have quotes around behavior. You know, to not announce your behavior. To just, especially the cameras are really a mind reader. So the more you can just be truthful instead of act truthful, there's a difference. There's a very slight difference, and the camera reads that, and the camera sees that as a chasm. You know, on stage it's not as obvious, but on film it is. And I can see that when I was a director recently, and I could see, it was a real lesson in acting actually, because I could see when my actors were acting and when they were just believing and being. And those were always the takes that were more compelling.
Then comes Joe versus the Volcano, and you star in it with Tom Hanks. And thus you begin this sort of professional relationship, but also a lifelong friendship. What did you think of him when you first met him, and how has that changed throughout the years?
You know, the terrific thing about Tom is that he doesn't surprise you. I mean, he is the guy you imagine him to be. He's funny and smart, and he listens, and he's curious. I think that's his great quality. He's really curious about the world and other people. And for me, that makes a great artist to be open like that. And that was a movie where I got, you know, Q-Core saying don't act. And John Patrick Shanley directed that film. He's a really terrific American playwright. And I remember him, I had to play 3 different characters in that movie. And I was like trying to be like super intellectual about it or something. And I knew it was a Jungian fairy tale. And anyway, one day he got so exasperated with me, and he goes, Meg, you don't have to get it right. There's no getting it right. This is an art form. So they're 2 really good, you know, they're simple, but they last, those pieces of advice.
Then comes Sleepless in Seattle, which of course screens here in Locarno this afternoon. And your on-screen collaboration with Tom Hanks continues. The chemistry builds up, as well as your actual collaboration with Nora Ephron. She was inspired in the last scene by An Affair to Remember by Leo McCarey, who of course enjoys a retrospective in this festival this year. What do the films of Q-Core, McCarey, and someone like Ernest Lubitsch represent to you, and have you drawn inspiration from them?
They are very inspiring to me, and when you deconstruct them, they are so sophisticated. And the festival here gave me a book about, I think giving everyone this book about Leo McCarey, a compilation of all these articles about him, and I learned quite a bit. But Leo McCarey directed Love Affair, then The Affair to Remember. He had the same material that he wrote and then revisited 20 years later and did the movie with Deborah Kerr and Cary Grant. And what Nora did, I thought that was so ingenious and very, very intelligent, is that Sleepless in Seattle is really a movie about love in the movies. So it follows a kind of DNA, and you know, it stands on itself, but really she's commenting on how love in the movies defines our expectations of love in real life. And it was very sly of her to do that, but and yes, I began, Tom and I continued a fun relationship, and the movie now is 25 years old, so I was with the producer recently who told a story about shooting at the Empire State Building, and which we had a set in Seattle where we did most of it, because they told Nora that they couldn't actually use the Empire State Building. So Nora wouldn't have any of that, and she really felt like anyone in life was only 2 phone calls away for her. So she ended up calling the Helmsley family, who owned the building, and she ended up calling Leona Helmsley to get permission to use to use the Empire State Building at the time she was in prison. So Nora got to her in prison, and Leona said you can use it for 6 hours only. So we only had it for 6 hours, and
There's old threads on Google speculating which floor of the Empire State Building you're on, which is probably why.
I think we were at the very top, mostly with the little boy, but we did most of it on a soundstage in Seattle.
What was it like to play a romance that happens mostly where the object of your romance is not on screen with you at the same time as you, or on screen but is not in the same room as you?
Yeah. Well, again, it just goes to the real craftsmanship and genius of Nora, because she was able to cultivate in the audience the desire for two people to be together. And I mean, I think we have one word between us, and then at the end scene, there's only a few, like, I don't think we say very much to each other in the whole film. So that's really Nora Ephron.
And when you play in a film like that, which is along with When Harry Met Sally and a few of the other films you've made during your career, do you know that you're being part of something really iconic?
No. That's not, it's such a happy accident when that happens, and something I think it takes years to figure out what actually lasts, right? So no, that's not an awareness we have.
Does anyone have any questions about Sleepless in Seattle? Oh, right there with the blue top.
Thanks for coming here. Sleepless in Seattle was shown in the Piazza Grande in 1993, and I was there and I saw it, and I was very disappointed that you used the Empire just for 6 hours, because when I went to New York, I went to look for the place where the scene was done, and the film was really very beautiful, and I'd like to congratulate with you.
When I was a kid and I first came to Europe, I was telling my friend that my friend Mary Lynn really wanted to go to where they shot The Sound of Music. We went to Salzburg, and we were told that, like, Maria was up there, and then we had no idea that locations were in completely different places. We thought that this field where all Mary Lynn wanted to do was twirl on that field. Couldn't find the field. So I know those pilgrimages.
Was there a challenging aspect to filming Sleepless in Seattle, or was it just this happy accident, as you said?
It really was fun. I mean, this is when you really miss Nora, because she was the queen of fantastic dinner parties, and her idea was that you just invite really interesting people with stories to tell, and you set an environment where they can tell them, or they're at their best. And the movie sets were like that for her. There's always interesting people to talk to, and they were funny, and she was funny, and it was just fun. It was flat out fun.
And then, after being crowned the undeniable queen of romantic comedies, you do a 180, and you decide to take on a role as an alcoholic in When a Man Loves a Woman, opposite Andy Garcia. What made you want to challenge yourself that way, and what made you choose that role, Alice?
Well, I think I've done something like 38 movies or something, and probably 10 or so of those are comedies, but the rest are me trying other things. And at the time, I was actually, it was one of those times where art and life meshed in a way that was really very healing for me, because and Dennis talks about this, we were married, and he was in rehab right while I was doing When a Man Loves a Woman. So it was a really cathartic and healing thing to kind of do in art what you were experiencing in life. You know, I was in the role of an alcoholic, and I was able to be, in a way, it gave me more empathy for my husband.
Do you think acting is this really great way to sort of get those kind of demons out?
sometimes it can really do that. I mean, there is a school of thought that posits that what you heal in yourself on stage, you heal in an audience, and sometimes I think that's true. Yeah.
How did you technically approach Alex? The role?
Well, I don't know if this qualifies as technical, but you know, the scenes where she's drunk, you have to be very precise as an actress, right? You have to hit marks, you have to repeat your exact action take by take. There's a real precision that you need to have but then throw away, and drunks are sloppy, or their desire is to be precise, but they're not precise. So that was some way I kind of tried to make myself a little dizzy, and they had clove cigarettes at the time, so I would sort of take a couple hits off a clove cigarette and feel gross, and then we would they call action. So in the very drunk scenes, and that was my technical approach, Nina.
I love that. Clove cigarettes, everyone, for like drunk people. I'm going to read these because I will never remember all of them. There's Courage Under Fire in the Following Years with Denzel Washington, French Kiss, whom the Minister of Culture and Foreign Affairs last night said was one of his favorite films.
Right.
City of Angels with Nicolas Cage, and then once again you work with Tom Hanks and Nora Ephron in You've Got Mail. But now you're a mother and a wife. So how does that change the way you approach a role?
Well, I had become a mother right for Jack was 3 or 4 months old when I did Sleepless. So that's actually my prevailing memory about Sleepless.
Okay.
Like, I have a baby. But I think, you know, being a mom, and I can't help but change you as an artist. It just can't help. I mean, it increases just at the basic level. It increases your compassion and empathy for another human being, and expands your heart, and it actually reminds you of how fragile and strong everything is. You know, so it can't help. I don't think it can help but help you as an artist.
Exactly, because you're so much more in tune.
Yeah.
Another dramatic film, Proof of Life, with
Russell Crowe.
Thank you. A moment. And then a rom-com, Kate and Leopold. And then, bang, you throw us all into In the Cut, which is so different and adds an incredible layer to the complexity of being a woman. How did you become involved with Jane Campion, and how did you decide that that was the role for Meg Ryan at that point?
I just really wanted to work with her. I mean, I just really wanted to work with her. She was a different kind of director than I had really ever been around. It was an independent movie. It wasn't in the studio system. It was also, it was a character that was her. So she's the protagonist, you know. The story is told, her story is told through me, which often doesn't happen when you're working with men. You are the object of the storytelling, not the subject of the storytelling. Meaning that, you know, the camera for Jane took Franny's point of view, and that is a real luxury, and it's a different type of experience. I thought the subject matter was really interesting, and I wanted the experience of being with a auteur like her.
And also, the film explored women's sexuality in a way that hadn't really been done.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, most of the times it's told through a man's viewpoint,
Mm-hmm.
not what the woman wants, yet why she wants it in respect to the man.
And that she had such an opinion about romance. She was so, you know, disappointed, and she felt that the promise of the Arthurian, you know, ideal, that there is such a thing as a knight in shining armor, was actually a very destructive thing for women and for men to continue with a hope about a mythology that doesn't apply. So you're setting yourself up as a failure kind of all the time when you don't find the one. And it's so obviously opposite the fantasy of something like Sleepless in Seattle. So she wanted to explore the underbelly of that. And I remember her saying all the time, she goes, well, this is a movie, it's like a movie that, it's like a restaurant that serves one thing. And if you don't want it, don't come. And it was a very bold way of looking at things, you know?
It played in the Piazza Grande last night. I hope some of you caught it there, in spite of the rain. And it's the most raw and naked of your films, literally naked. What was the challenging aspect of that kind of public
awful
privacy?
You know, Jane was so nervous about that part, but you know, she came out of the gate telling both Mark Ruffalo and I, you've seen Don't Look Back, right? You've seen Don't Look Back. And that's a movie with Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland that's very frank sexually. But she was more nervous about it than me or Mark, and she kept coming up, you know, to rehearsal with books about sex and orgasms, and Mark and I just go, we just said, we have to just gut it out, Jane. We have to clear the set. We have to do those scenes, and we have to just lighten up. So that's what we ended up doing. We just had to.
I would like to ask the audience if they have any questions about In the Cut. Mary Haynes in The Women, and I thought that was a brilliant film as well, directed by Diane English, who's famous for Murphy Brown on TV, of course, which is getting revamped now. A movie by women, only featuring women. There's not a single man in a shot anywhere. Right. And that's an interesting thing. So does that feel like a different kind of set from, say, Rob Reiner's?
Yeah, I think you need men. Really. Yeah. I think that there's you know, ideally we want a balance, right? Nothing primarily male or female. I mean, it was a blast, and there was the makeup trailer in particular was really fun. It was all female makeup artists and hairists and all actresses in there. And at a certain point, like early into the filming, I remember Annette saying, kind of calling everybody to order and saying, you know what? We can't be like a gaggle of hens in here. It's going to get in the DNA of the movie. We can't gossip in here. We have to be respectful in here. And she was really right. So it was fun to be with everybody, but I think anything benefits from both genders being there.
Yeah. You've said that if you were starting out today as an actor, it would be challenging for you because of social media as well, like having to keep up with that. What's your relationship still with social media, and do you think there's good to it also for an actor's career?
I think there is good to it. I think not. I think that just the opportunity for a celebrity to speak directly to an audience and cut out the middlemen, cut out press releases and things like that, I think can be very beneficial. But social media for me, I feel like I'm much more reticent about what my public self, you know. So it's taken me a little getting used to. And I finally realized, like, Instagram and social media and Twitter, you don't really have to share all your most personal thoughts or where you are, or you can just be funny and light about it too. So I'm still learning.
Then in 2016, Meg Ryan, the star, becomes Meg Ryan, the filmmaker. You had a production company for a while as well, but now you're a director, and you direct as your first project, Ithaca,
right,
drawn from a William Saroyan 1945 novel, The Human Comedy.
Right.
Your son Jack stars as your son.
He's not actually, he's one of my sons in the movie.
He's the one at war.
He's not the lead. He's the
one at war.
Yes, he's the one at war, right.
And And then again, you have Tom Hanks on set for a day, I think, to play your husband. So what made you want to try your hand at directing?
Well, I wanted to tell that story, and I thought that that would be a good one to start with because I'd raised a son. And really it's a mother's point of view about raising a son and raising a son in the world with integrity. And it's a story, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's a story of a boy, it's 1942, and he wants to be the fastest telegram messenger, bicycle messenger in the valley, and he gets a job at Western Union during the beginning part of the war and finds himself delivering telegrams to families of people whose sons have been killed. And of course, he has to deliver one to his own mom. So it's a very sad story, but it's a very episodic novel. So I had the experience of helping adapt the novel to find the story. I mean, when you direct, you have to figure out, when you're an actor, you don't really have to know anything but your lines and about what you need to do in a scene. But when you're a director, you gotta know what everyone on the set is doing. And up until then, I didn't know what mostly anybody else was doing on the set. So I thought it was small enough for me to handle, and I had a point of view as a mother.
And it's really a beautiful film. I'm not saying it because you're sitting here, but it really is beautifully made, and it delves into the right thing. Who were your inspirations? Did you draw from someone? Filmmakers?
I think it's an old-fashioned movie, so it was actually a lot of old-fashioned filmmakers. You know, we didn't have a lot of money, so a lot of these things were just dictated, but we couldn't move the camera all that much. A lot of the story is told in tableau. The rhythm of it is very like an old film, and we were inspired by a lot of early kind of Kodachrome colors, and you know, we made the movie in 21 days with $2.7 million. So it was kind of quite an experience. But so many people did me favors, like Tom and John Mellencamp did the music, and you know, those are sort of priceless contributions to a small movie. So it was the goodwill of a lot of people in my life.
Would you do it again to direct?
Yeah, I mean, once you do it once, you feel so alive when you're directing that you know, when you're looking through a camera lens and you're thinking a lot about light and the way colors are, and then you're talking to the sound people and you're understanding soundscape, and all of a sudden you're listening to birds differently and watching things, and then you're involved with the music, and so you feel like all your senses are very heightened, and so you kind of want to keep repeating that experience.
And you've done a bit of TV lately. How do you feel about that?
Well, I haven't started, but I had an idea for a series which I sold to NBC. We'll see if it ever comes out, but it's fun, and I think television is a great place right now, especially cable television and everything on the internet. There's a lot of terrific people working there and doing exceptional things.
I would love to have the audience come in at this point. I'm sure there's a lot of you with...
Maybe you walk in a funny way, like it's your natural walking way or something. No, it's very funny actually. It's a lovely thing.
I guess.
Okay, and if you can tell us something more about your friendship with Tom Hanks and Nicolas Cage. Actually happened something really funny on set. That's all.
Something really funny that happened with Tom or with Nicolas Cage. Oh gosh. Wow, it's like trying to think of so long ago. But I just do remember about both of them. And all of the men that I've worked with, just so charming and fun. And I haven't had a bad experience with anybody. Everybody's so different, and I think everybody that I've worked with has been a real pro and really smart and willing to have fun and not taking everything too seriously. So I've been very lucky.
Thank you.
If there was an outtakes of Meg Ryan's film career, what would be on it? Oh, and now takes reel of like things that have gone wrong.
So embarrassing. I mean, what hasn't gone wrong? I mean, I remember them having to. I mean, endlessly. Like, you know, we have to reshoot that mag. We saw the dailies. You had lunch in your teeth. I mean, endlessly things go wrong.
And the peanut butter jar at the beginning.
Yes. Mostly about me not knowing what.
Other questions? In the back there.
Sally, you said earlier that it was your idea to shoot it that way at the Cat's Deli, so I wondered if there are any other ideas of yours in the film.
Oh, it wasn't my idea to shoot it that way. It was just my idea that she should do it instead of just talk about it. And then everybody else, that's what's great about being on a movie set. It's a collaboration at its best. It's so great. It's a community of people all working together, right? So, you know, Rob had the funny line or Billy had the funny line. So on its own, it doesn't work, but with all of the how he shot it, the timing of how Rob cut it, all that stuff makes a comic moment. They're very constructed. Comedies are very mathematical in a kind of way. They have to do with, I know I'm not answering your question, but they do have to do with a lot of happy accidents and then real structure. So those, and romantic comedies too aren't slapstick. And they're not drama and they're not comedy, they're kind of both. So tonally they really have to hit something very precise. And those are really why those early movies are such an inspiration, because you can deconstruct them and see that, oh, this is really about class, and oh, this is really about, you know, taking a snapshot of culture and society right at that time. So there's a lot of intelligence that goes into something that is seemingly light. And I think I always think about what some of Hugh Grant said, that doing a romantic comedy is like being a balloon in a world of pins. And it's true. You have to just keep yourself from getting deflated and popped, and that takes a kind of precision. So so every movie, I remember I've done, I don't know how many movies where the script started out named something completely different, and somebody in the crew had a better idea, and we named it that. I think When Harry Met Sally started out being called something different. I think somebody like who was in the lighting team came up with the title, and the same with French Kiss. So it's it really is a deeper collaboration than you could ever guess. Everybody's important on a movie set.
Here in the second row with the white shirt.
Hello. I know it's a long time ago, but I would like to know how it was to work with the great Tony Scott in Top Gun and the great Oliver Stone in The Doors. Thank you.
Yeah, both really strong. With Top Gun, I had like 2 scenes, and I remember Tony Scott saying to me, "All right, Meg, in this scene you're happy." And the next day for my next scene, he goes, "All right, Meg, in this scene you're sad." All right, that's enough to go on. Fantastic, thank you. And Oliver was just wild. I mean, just wild, a wild man. And he had a fantastic crew who really understood him, and he was a really improvisational filmmaker too, in terms of the camera. So that was fun, and he knew what he was doing. So.
In the back with the white shirt.
Hi, it's nice to see you here and I'm in Locarno. I wanted to ask you something a bit different. It's more of a mainstream movie. You did The Women, and I just wanted to ask you to say maybe something about it, because I kind of grew up watching more mainstream movies before getting into film, and it's kind of one of my first memories of feeling empowered as a woman. So I was just curious to know something about the movie.
The movie The Women.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that movie too.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun making it, and we knew we were remaking a classic, and what were we doing that? And there are different sets of I mean, there are different goals when you're making a mainstream movie than when you're making an independent movie. I mean, you're going to be interested in the test scores. You're going to be interested that the main characters are really sympathetic. You are going to be interested in A, B, and C laughs. And Diane English, the director, had such a great run on Murphy Brown. She was so smart about women and representing them in an intelligent way. And also, we always loved that she liked to light us beautifully. She took a lot of care that way. It made us all feel great. And you know, somebody like Deborah Messing is really fun. Eva Mendes, a blast. So a lot of times when you're an actress on a film, actually, you're the only girl there, the only actress, one of the only actresses. And so that was unique too, to see how everybody else did it. To see, you know, oh, it's not so weird for me to like the hair person to be on standby. Everybody has their own little peccadillos, you know? So there was a tremendous confederacy. I think most of the women there felt that way, that you're very rarely in one another's company. And yeah, so it was unique that way too.
And you were really glamorous in that film.
It was very glamorous.
Yeah. It was cool. There are two questions that are actually behind the barricade. I don't know if you can get to them. Both gentlemen are wearing black shirts, one in the back and one closer to the barricade. In the very back.
Hello? Here?
Oh, yes, oh, sorry.
Hello?
Hello.
I think you said one day that Hollywood is not doing nice roles for a woman over 40. Do you think there's an improvement now, and now you are a producer? Are you trying to change that, and are you working in that direction?
Yes, you know, when you're a producer, really, mostly what you do is you try to find material. You throw like 100 things at the wall, hoping 2 stick. You know, that's a good ratio even there. So I'm interested. I'm not necessarily just interested in stories about women. I do think the unique thing is to tell the story through a feminine lens, and that doesn't necessarily have to be about women. Like I liked doing Ithaca because it was about being a mother, but it was about a mother raising not a daughter but a son, and how a boy becomes a man, and what that, from a mother's perspective, what that is. I think television has done, the expansion of quality television has done a great thing for women. And I remember maybe 15 or 20 years ago, television was the place that they sent female executives. They just sent them there. It was a kind of a backwater. And now, you know, those executives and that talent has ripened. And now it's where we all have our men and women have our best opportunity. You know, there's money that's secure there. The studios are now making tentpole movies more than indie movies. It's really rare if you can find the money for a drama to do. But that, there's something in the genesis of of television right now, that the kernel of that is, that's where they sent the ladies.
Unfortunately, they told me we have time for one last question, so perfect.
Okay, is it working? Cool.
Yes.
Hi, Meg.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. Just a general question. If you look at all those market trends at the moment, I mean, subscriber numbers across all those online streaming platforms are just exploding. The admission numbers in cinema are just decreasing. What is your personal perspective on the future of cinema?
That's a great question.
Good question.
Wow. My personal. Are you pointing to the woman next to you? I think, you know, hopefully, you know, we need stories, and the delivery system of stories. Now, I mean, I have a friend who watches Turner Classic Movies on their phone, and part of that makes me feel like, oh, you don't know what you're missing to watch it on a bigger screen and with people. But then again, he is watching the awful truth and, you know, bringing up baby. So there's no stopping the progress of how we're going to deliver entertainment. There's just no stopping it. And right now, it's created such really such a wonderful opportunity in television. There's nothing to sneeze at there. But when it comes to film, I hope that the experience that some of you have had in the big Piazza Grande, with 8,000 people watching a film, that is unique. And that adds something, that you'll remember that movie, or you'll remember that night. And I hope we don't lose that.
I want to thank Meg Ryan for being so generous.